Hey everyone, welcome to Fighting Over the Card Catalog, a snarky look back on young adult novels of the 80s and 90s. I'm Jess.
And I'm Steven, and I'm here to make my wife happy.
A little dance you just did. We're taking a journey to find out how many terrible and hopefully some not so terrible books from my youth I can get my husband to read before he reconsiders this whole marriage. Hello.
Hey, love.
Hey, love. How's your week?
It's been a week.
It's been a week.
Already. It's Tuesday.
Yeah.
It feels like fourth Monday.
Yeah.
But you know. It'll be a good weekend.
We're going to have a great weekend. Yeah, but we're recording another podcast before that. So.
Right. Well, we'll have to say the same thing then.
Oh, okay. It's like, I don't know what happened. We had like the chillest weekend. Oh, we had a lot of good soccer and football.
Like, it was funny because the guy who sits across from me is a big Green Bay fan, and Green Bay beat the Cowboys over the weekend. Mm-hmm. So everybody was expecting him to come in gloating, but he didn't. And it's like the first time it's not the first time they've beaten the Cowboys, but it's the first time he's come in and just not like walking in saying, "How about those Cowboys?" Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's mellowed out a lot about that. I guess that's a good thing. He's had too many people razz him about his razzing.
I prefer the Packers to the Cowboys.
But he did wear his Green Bay jersey to work on Monday.
Okay, I mean, that's fair.
He just didn't say anything.
But he did.
But I told him, well, my Dallas team won 6-0 on Sunday to make it into the playoffs. So
yeah. And which we'll lose in the first round probably, but it's fine.
We have a chance. We've beat them already this year.
Yeah. So I started doing this thing on our social media where I'm introducing everyone to our dogs one by one since we hear them. Mm-hmm. That was Luna. Who I put up this week. Okay, so speaking of this week, that was a horrible transition. I'm sorry. This week's book was another ghost story. By the way, we have gotten no blowback from your controversial stance on ghosts last week, so I think you're good. You seem very concerned people would hate you, but unless they hate us so much to not say anything.
Right.
So, anyways, this week's book is Wait Till Helen Comes.
So I just kind of keep going further till I make somebody so mad they have to comment. Is that the way it goes?
Wow. Okay. Wait Till Helen Comes by Mary Downing Hahn, published in 1986. Tell us about it.
Beware of Helen. Heather is such a whiny little brat. And that is absolutely true.
It is absolutely true.
Always getting Michael and me into trouble. But since our mother married her father, we're stuck with her. Our poor stepsister, who lost her real mother in a mysterious fire. But now something terrible has happened. Heather has found a new friend out in the graveyard behind our home. A girl named Helen who died with her family in a mysterious fire over 100 years ago. Now her ghost returns to lure children into the pond to drown. I don't want to believe in ghosts, but I followed Heather into the graveyard and watched her talk to Helen. And I'm terrified. Not for myself, but for Heather.
I think through most of it, she's pretty terrified for herself. Not so much about Heather, but it's fine. So, what do you think of this one?
Well, I have to say that of all the books that I've read with flaky parents, these are probably the flakiest of the parents.
I don't even think flaky's the word for it. Maybe the mom.
It but literally
the stepdad is fucking horrible.
It literally goes from one chapter saying, I need you to keep an eye on your sister, to leave your sister alone, to the next chapter, I'm counting on you. Mm-hmm. Why are you letting me down? I'm counting on you to keep an eye on your sister and keep her out of the trouble. To the next chapter, stop spying on your sister. It's...
Yeah, you're not wrong on that.
And we'll talk about, there's another incident that happens where, I know it's all on the author, but still, She made some flaky parents, and we'll talk about something else later.
They're shitty parents.
Yeah.
But overall, for the book, how do you like it?
I mean, it was very annoying. The characters were very annoying. The parents were annoying.
They were terrible.
The stepsister was completely annoying.
She's a psychopath.
So, and then at the end, they just try to tie it all up in a nice bow. Like, now we're all... Well, I'm not going to say. We'll talk about that later.
It's fine.
Anyway, yeah, I've got to give it like a 6 or 7.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, there was some story-driven stuff in there. I like the brother, but...
I knew you would.
Who never believed in the ghost at any time during the story. But, yeah, it was not great.
I like this book. I give it a 3.
Ah.
Uh-huh. I think it's a fun story. I mean, yeah, some of the characters are absolutely terrible.
That's probably the biggest spread we've had on a book.
Oh, maybe so. Interesting.
A 3 to 4 spread, yeah.
Wow.
Most of the time we're really close within one or the same.
It's these ghosts, man.
Yeah.
It'll be the downfall of our relationship. So this book got banned from reading lists in libraries.
For why?
Because it deals with the subject of death and suicide. And some people saw it as saying that suicide is a viable way of dealing with family problems.
Okay.
Which I don't really think that's what it's saying, but, you know, people who like to ban books see things in their own warped way anyway that I don't understand.
Well, it definitely was glorifying suicide at one point because it was to kill yourself to be in a better situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can see that being
but by an evil ghost.
Right.
Yeah.
Lying
and
to
it's
you,
clearly
telling
never
they're unicorns and
yeah. I mean, she almost swayed me there, but no. All right, so let's get into it. So that makes sense. 12-year-old Molly and her brother Michael, who's 10, are like super resentful of their 7-year-old stepsister Heather. Heather's mom had died in a house fire when Heather was 3. And so now she's like super clingy and possessive of her father, Dave, who I hate so much. And she's very resentful and jealous of any attention he gives to Jean, Molly, and Michael's mom or them. But it's okay. He only gives them negative attention. So
right.
But at the beginning, I mean, Molly's not exactly the most sympathetic girl either. She's like, oh, I know it must have been horrible to see her mother die in a fire and be too little to help, but she was only 3 years old. She should have gotten over it by now, Michael.
True. How much do you remember from being 3 years old?
To 7, though?
To 7.
And a big traumatic event like that?
Twice your life.
Yeah.
It's like doubling your lifespan.
Yeah. Come on. Have you ever seen The Bad Seed?
I don't think I have.
Oh, it's so good. We should watch it this month. Yeah. There's nothing ghost about it. Just a horrible little girl. Anyways, that's who... I
mean, I've seen shows like how it's described, where it's just truly an evil girl who everybody keeps saying it's just a little girl. And and then they keep killing people.
Yeah.
Yeah. In horrible ways.
Yeah. Anyways, that's who Michael and Molly compare Heather to. And I think it's a fair assumption. I mean, she never kills anybody, but
it's definitely every time you possibly can get your brother and sister into trouble just because you're a little girl and they're going to believe that you're getting picked on rather than the other way around.
Right, because she's like constantly lying about Molly and Michael, like bullying her and shit, which is not happening.
Yeah, there's not I don't think there's a single interaction until toward the end of the book in which she interacts with the brother or sister and does something even neutral. It's all a negative,
Yeah.
Even after she gets her way and she's driving down the road, she sticks her tongue out at them.
Yeah, she's super conniving. Yeah. And it works because Dave and Jean like totally don't trust Michael and Molly and always getting on to them about being nice to their little stepsister and like, oh, you haven't even tried. And they're like, bullshit. But it doesn't matter. And then things get even worse because they are moving out of Baltimore to a small town out in the country, to an old converted church, which I think sounds hella cool. And it sounds like Escape to the Country-ish, but it's already been converted, so they don't do any of the work.
I have to question these parents because more than once they leave their kids alone. And the kids had no idea that they were moving. So at some point, they left their kids alone to go out and look for houses in the country somewhere.
Yeah.
And then when they found one, not tell them.
Yeah, that was
that they found one.
And then they were like, she like was like, oh, they didn't tell them that it was like 5 miles out of town.
Yeah.
And they had told them like there's a library. And, Michael's like, you didn't tell us we'd have to ride our bikes 5 miles into town. She's like, well, I just didn't say it. It was, it was pretty conniving of them. Yeah, this whole family's a clusterfuck already. I mean, Molly and Michael are cool. But as for leaving them, Molly's 12. This was published the same year the Babysitter's Club books came out. So, yeah. Well, I hadn't thought about that. Do they seem like the same age? Like Molly and Christy?
No, the younger brother sounded older, but...
Yeah.
He was 10, right?
Yeah. Not only is there a church, but there is a graveyard. And Molly's super creeped out by this and gets like a really bad feeling about it. And one thing she says is bad luck to step on a grave. Do you believe that? Or do you, not bad luck, but I mean, do you do that? Do you step on graves?
Yeah. I mean, at one point in my life, I didn't. I believed that there was something watching me that would see that I was stepping on sacred earth or something, but no, it's just a skeleton now to me. So
I think it's disrespectful to step on graves.
I mean, if it's just grass, if there's like a marked area, like you see those graves that have like a like bricks around their area or whatever, I won't do that. But otherwise, I mean, it's just
I won't.
grass.
I will try to do it like between headstones straight down and then like like do a little like Pac-Man type path. Yeah, not because I think it's like I've never heard it's bad luck or I don't think somebody's watching me. I just think it's disrespectful. But anyway,
did we talk about the graveyard I found outside of Elkhart?
I don't know. With Quanah Parker?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, because I think it was the Indian in the cover.
I think so. Yeah.
Episode. Yeah. Okay.
So as soon as they pull up,
there was something creepy at that graveyard.
Wait, you got creeped out by something?
It was a little creepy. Okay.
Okay.
It was next to a. Okay, so next to a tombstone, an older tombstone, was a board, just a piece of wood that was very old and weathered, that had a name scratched into it, and then dates. Like it was a tombstone, and then an old toy gun, and it was the age range would have been for a little kid. And it was just sitting there next to the other grave with like I have a picture of it actually.
Of course you do. Okay.
On my Facebook, so I'll have to find that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. But I mean, was it like related to the headstone?
I think it was. I think it had my theories. I don't remember why I thought so. If it had the same last name or something like that. Yeah, I don't remember.
But it wasn't the same like name, right? It wasn't we had this board and then we put this up after we could afford it. How old was it?
I don't remember.
Well, I mean, was it like 1800s or?
No, it wouldn't have been the 1800s. It probably was like a couple of decades.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's a toy gun.
But I'll try to find the picture.
Okay.
So
it was 9.
The dates were... Oh, it's actually 1956 to 1997.
I thought it said 47.
No, I think it's 97.
Nice.
So that would have been about a decade.
Died on Jessica's 18th birthday. Yeah, so it wasn't a kid, though.
No.
Yeah.
So the toy gun's what got me on there.
But it's next to that one with the Franks.
Mm-hmm. So there was another one next to it.
3 when that person died.
Maybe that's what I was thinking. That when that other person died, that they was 3. He was 3. And that's why I was thinking it was their kid.
Yeah.
That person's kid.
But still, that's really sad. It really is just a board. Wow. It's like a 2x6 board. That I'll put up on Instagram or something. Because, wow, that's creepy. It looks creepy with the toy gun even. It's a great picture, though. Great job. Anyway, so as soon as they pull up to their new house, Dave sends Molly and Heather out to explore the woods. What kids wouldn't be checking out the house in their room and shit first? I was like, that was really weird. Like, I'd be super psyched about, going out in the woods, too. Just to, look around and explore.
Yeah, but you got to get your room first.
Yeah. I mean, what? Super weird.
I think it maybe is just this Mary Downing Hahn isn't actually a human.
You don't think so?
She doesn't know humans.
Great author. She's got other good books. We've got one. But anyways, okay, yeah. So the woods are great. There's a creek. It sounds so much like what I played in Connecticut and stuff. And I was like, oh, this sounds great. And I really would have fucking loved it if I'd come across a graveyard on our property.
Yeah.
Which was another thing they did not tell the children, by the way. They just...
Right.
Came across it.
By the way, we live in an old church and...
Yeah. So Molly's like a creative type and she likes writing and poetry and stuff. While her brother Michael is very into science and all this sort of stuff. So she's like, doesn't the graveyard bother you at all? And he's all, I think it's great. I'm going to make it an archaeological project. I'll study all the graves and then figure out what the people died of. And she's like, you don't mean you're going to dig them up? He's like, no, of course not. That's against the law. What do you think I am, a body snatcher? And he's like, not that it wouldn't interest me. In fact, I wish I could. They dig up Indian burial grounds and primitive Iron Age people, and they learn a lot from the things they buried with them. So, like, I've heard this question posited before. Mm-hmm. When does it, like, how old does something have to be to go from grave robbing to research, science? And
how I think about it is any people who have actual ties to it can't be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And then it can become an archaeological site. If it
but
is,
how so?
Because then it doesn't have any humans to cause trouble and say, no, that's sacred and you can't dig it up.
Okay, but I mean, like, what are the ties? What do you consider ties?
Well, I would say like having tribal affiliations or some direct heritage in line with that. Like I would say like looking at Nordic countries, if somebody knows that their Nordic family was buried in this certain plot, then that becomes a direct link. But if it's just an old Nordic plot, then it becomes an archaeological site.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Interesting thought. I don't really know what I feel on it, but yeah, digging up Indian burial grounds is no.
Right.
That's a no. Sorry.
And that's because they still have tribal affiliations and they know this was
yeah. And my God, the white man already came in and fucked everything up. Let's not do it after death. Hey, I read this in a couple of books. Molly puts her pajamas under her pillow during the day. I've read that in quite a few books. Have you? Is that a thing you know about or ever heard about?
No.
Me neither. Like, I get it. Like, re-wearing pajamas. Mm-hmm. I wear the same pajamas 2 or 3 days in a row. But yeah, it's just putting them under the pillow is a very particular thing, and I've read it enough that it seems like this was a thing that like really happened. But I've never heard of it in real life. While exploring the graveyard, Heather discovers a tombstone hidden under a tree. And the dates reveal the grave belongs to a 7-year-old child. But the stone bears only the initials H-E-H, which just so happened to be Heather's initials.
Right.
And she's 7. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, that'd be freaky.
Mm-hmm. So many times, Molly is asked to keep an eye on Heather. She goes to look for her. Heather disappears and appears like real silently and creepily a lot, by the way. But she went to go find her, and I found Heather sitting in the shade staring at the small tombstone under the oak tree. On the grave, she had placed a peanut butter jar filled with black-eyed Susans and Queen Anne's lace. As I watched, scarcely daring to breathe, she said something in a voice too low for me to hear, her hands flashing in the shadows as she gestured nervously. Then she sat back, her mouth half open, her eyes half closed, nodding her head as if she were in a trance. All around me the leaves rustled, and I shivered, sure that the noise they made was hiding words from me that were audible to Heather. Convinced that she was in danger, I leaned toward her, peering through a tangle of honeysuckle, wondering what I should do. "Oh, Helen," Heather said suddenly, her voice louder. "Will you really be my friend? I'll do anything you say. I promise I will, if you'll be my friend." Again she was silent, her head tilted to one side, a smile twitching the corners of her mouth. The breeze blew again, making a dry sound of whispering, and Heather nodded. "I'll wait for you, Helen. When you come, I'll be the best friend you ever had. Cross my heart." So what was your impression of Heather on that? Do you think she was just buck wild crazy?
Well, I mean, not from the way the book was set up. You knew it was a ghost.
Oh, okay. But you don't believe in ghosts? Just fine. Okay.
I mean, if I had seen her, yes, I would have think she was buck wild crazy and had an invisible friend that was kind of creepy, which would make her even more creepy.
And then Heather starts using Helen as a threat to Molly and Michael. Heather looked at us, a frown creasing her face. "Molly's right. You better not laugh, Michael. Helen doesn't like either one of you. And when she comes, you'll be sorry for everything you ever did to me." I mean, that's fucking crazy by that. Mm-hmm. I mean, yikes. One night, Heather has a nightmare about the fire that she and her mother were in. And Molly tries to wake her up, and like parents come in and stuff, and Molly's worried that Dave's going to blame her, Molly, for it somehow. And yep, he sure as hell does. I hate this whole bit. "You and Michael haven't been asking her questions about the fire, have you?" "Of course not." I stared at him, shocked. Surely he knew Michael and I had promised not to talk to Heather about the fire. Did he think we would go back on our word? I thought something might have stirred up her memories.
I mean, the girl is so annoying by this time. I would totally have been talking to her about her mama's fire.
You're awful.
And how her mama died in a fire.
Oh my God.
And she probably killed her. I would have been, yeah, I would have been really making this girl even more crazy.
Really? Really?
If she was that mean to me, I would get mean back, yes.
Wow. I mean, she suffered some trauma.
Yeah.
She should be in therapy.
Most certainly.
Wow. Okay. So, Molly tries telling Dave and her mom about Heather being so hella weird in the graveyard, but they turn that around on her, telling her she's scaring Heather. And Michael's even like, no, like, it's legit the other way around, but they don't care. So Molly goes looking for Michael in the woods. And instead, she finds this old falling down stone house. And Heather being creepy again. She's sitting on the porch and she's saying, "It's lovely here, Helen," she said, turning toward a space in the air, or sort of shimmering emptiness that reminded me of heat waves thrown out by a campfire on a hot day. I was sure that Heather could see someone or something, that she could hear a voice speaking in the breeze. Molly later sees Heather wearing an antique silver locket with the same initials, the H-E-H. And Heather gloats that her new friend, Helen Elizabeth Harper, gave it to her. The fuck was that?
H-E-H. And what? H-E-H.
What?
H-E-H and H-E-H.
Oh. Heh. That's how I would say it.
Yeah, but that doesn't make a good sound.
No, it doesn't. Molly tells her mom about the house and how it might be dangerous, but she doesn't talk to Heather about it. She just gets on to Molly and says, "You're old enough to be responsible. We moved here so Dave and I would have time to work without worrying about you all." They'd never see these children.
So let us go play in this old abandoned house and don't worry about us.
No. Molly's supposed to worry. I hate this whole mindset. And again, I'm not a parent, so I know it doesn't matter, my opinion. But I can't stand when parents have children parent the younger children.
You're still a human who has to live in a world with humans that have mothers and fathers.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes. So I can have opinions?
So you can't have opinions.
A lot of people would say I don't.
Well,
But anyways. Yeah. I mean, your kids were too close in age for one of them to look after the other, right?
Well, there was a time period where it was like, okay, I think Aaron's old enough to leave him by himself, but I'll take my flip phone with me just in case.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So he would technically be in charge of both of them?
Yes.
Yeah. But, I mean...
But it's like... Megan,
if something happened to him...
Megan was already knew mind control. She already knew ways of making Aaron leave her alone.
So that's good.
And
so
to get
it was
her
more
way.
like just the other being there in case something happened.
Yes.
It was kind of equal.
Yeah.
He certainly wasn't parenting her.
He was responsible.
Yeah.
But, equally, they were both really equally irresponsible.
Yeah. So Molly and Michael, they get to go out on, well, actually they get in trouble for it later, but they go into town to the library to see if they can find anything about this old house or anything. And they learn that Helen Elizabeth Harper was a real child who died 100 years before. Her mother and stepfather died in a fire at the house. And Heather escaped the blaze only to panic and run into a nearby pond where she drowned. And Helen was buried under a temporary stone, hoping that they'd find the bodies of the parents, but they were never found. So Heather's weird little grave was left there alone. And also, some other children have drowned in the same pond over the years. And so Molly begins to fear that Helen plans to lure Heather into the pond so that she'll stay with Helen forever.
Hopefully she'll do it soon.
Oh my God. Wow. They're on the way back home and they get in trouble with fucking Dave. He's all, "Do you two have any idea what a scare you gave us? We couldn't find you. We called and called. Finally, I found Heather way down on the other side of the creek near that ruin you told your mother about. She said you took her there and ran off and left her." I stared at him. "We didn't take her anywhere." But he went right on talking. "Why do you treat her so badly? You've made her life miserable ever since we moved out here." He was yelling now. His face was red. "Heather's just a little girl, a very sensitive little girl. Why can't you treat her decently? What's wrong with you two?" I mean, what the fuck, dude?
At that point, my mom would have been reconsidering the marriage. And
I mean, you would hope so, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not yet, but their mom does kind of say she's like, the Heather's difficult to live with.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't go much beyond that.
Yeah, because surely she does that same kind of thing to her, because her whole deal is trying to get her dad to separate himself from her and her stepbrother and sister.
Yeah, we learn later, like, she's never let Jean hug her or anything or touch her. So, yeah. But it's easier to get the kids in trouble. So, yeah, but yeah. Yeah, that's where her mom's super problematic, for sure. Because she doesn't stand up for her kids at all until the very end. Michael and Molly are talking about all this, and they're talking about stuff they learned at the library. And Molly's like, well, if there's not a ghost, like, how does Heather know all this stuff about Helen? And he's all, it could be ESP. I didn't used to believe in all that paranormal stuff, but there is scientific evidence that a few people have some sort of extrasensory perception. Do you believe in that?
No, not ESP.
Not at all?
No.
Okay.
I mean, okay, so not in the sense that people think of ESP as in mind reading or things like that. Mm-hmm. Extrasensory perception as being able to hear better, smell better, things like that, then yes.
Yes. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
There are conditions that allow people to smell the way they can look at something and have a smell sensory go off. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's a different perception of a sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway, not mind reading. No.
No.
Or talking to ghosts.
Really? Do you think people, like, gut feelings about people, or how you sense, if you, like, get a weird sense off of somebody, do you think that's grounded in anything real?
I mean, it's all really about perceptions, because you say you don't judge people, but everything you do and see, you're judging in some way or other.
Well, yeah.
And you can tell micro expressions and how people look and treat others, look at and treat others, like when their backs turn, things like that. You can definitely get feelings from that.
Hey pals, we're going to begin adding the podcast business here in the middle and get it out of the way. So, hey, if you've been enjoying our show, please share it, tweet it, tell your friends and enemies. Word of mouth is the best way for podcasts to grow, and we would just really appreciate it. I know if you're listening, you probably have some bookworm friends from back in the day who would love to reminisce with us. Please consider rating us on Apple Podcasts and subscribing there, or at any of your favorite podcast places of choice. Come hang out with us on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube, Pinterest, all at Fighting Over the Card Catalog, and on Twitter at Card Catalog Pod, and me, personally, at Just Digress. And last but not least, check out our website where you can find all the things I just mentioned. So now we are about in a point where Jean's having enough, because everybody gets into a fight that night. Heather. Jean and Dave are like yelling at each other, and like the kids can hear it. And so everybody's kind of all freaked out. But later that night, Heather sneaks out the window, and Molly follows her, and shit gets real fast. Dimly lit by the blue glow I'd seen from the house, Heather held out a jar of wildflowers as if she were making an offering. The silver locket gleamed on her chest, and her eyes glittered. "Helen," she whispered. "Helen, are you here?" Too frightened to breathe, I saw the glimmer of blue light shape itself into the figure of a girl no bigger than Heather. She wore a white dress, and her hair, as dark as Heather's, tumbled down in waves on her back. Her features were indistinct, her eyes in shadow, but I knew who she was. "I'm here," the girl said. Her voice was low and cold. Heather smiled. "How beautiful you are," she whispered as Helen took the flowers and bent her face to smell their fragrance. They regarded each other silently for a few moments. Then Heather spoke once more. "They have been cruel to me again," she said. "I told them you're coming, but I don't think they believe me. Do something soon, Heather. Make them sorry." Heather leaned towards the dim figure, imploring her. Soon, Helen's voice was like the winter wind blowing through a field of weeds, dry and cruel. Very soon. And then we'll be together all the time? You'll never leave me? You'll always love me? Heather gazed at Helen, desperation in her eyes. In her voice and gestures. For all eternity, Helen sighed. You and I, Heather, will never be alone again. I promise you. One pale hand, almost transparent, glimmered near the locket, making it shine with borrowed radiance. How about Daddy? He'll be with us, won't he? Heather took a tiny step backward, away from the hand touching the locket. Helen didn't answer. Her image wavered like a reflection on the water when a breeze ruffles the surface. Then she was gone, and the graveyard seemed to plunge into darkness. Heather cried out, reaching toward the air where Helen's shape had vanished. I mean, that's some fun, creepy writing. I had my note here to ask you if you liked it until this point when the ghost actually shows up. But I take it you didn't, so never mind.
No, in this instance, it was the annoying characters versus not so much the ghost story.
Okay. The parents take Heather. It gets confusing, Helen or Heather. Heather off to town, and they're like, y'all have been shit, so you're staying here, basically.
Yeah, okay, so this is the point, one of the things I was going to talk about. Mm-hmm. So here's what they're saying is, you've been so mean to her, we really don't trust you to be together, and you guys are old enough to take care of yourself, so we're taking her with us. Mm-hmm. Not, hey, let's all go as a family, and you know, we'll do things together, but
with us
I'm
there to be the adults,
and you take care of yourself. Yeah, because they're only together as a family with the adults in charge at dinner. It sounds like, right?
You know, they're never there when Heather's, you know, being as well. When they think the older kids, I guess, are being mean to Heather or whatever, they're never there to mediate any of these situations. And so, a day out probably would have been good for all of them. And they were like, well, can we go? And they're like, mm-mm. We're separating you. Heather needs a break from you. Yeah. God. But it's okay because they plan a really great day. Because Michael's like, you want to go down to the swamp with me? And she's like, no, not normally, but they pack a lunch and they set up for the swamp following the creek. I think that sounds great. That's a fun day. Packing a lunch to go hang out in the woods? Hell yeah, sign me up. I mean, that's the sort of shit I did.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the woods and following creeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one time I followed a path in a creek, and it turned out to be like this pond and like a slightly bigger creek, like coming down rocks and stuff into the pond. And I was like, oh my God, this place is magical. And so I brought my mom and my brother one time. And all of a sudden this guy comes up and tells us we're on private property. And I wanted to die. I was so anxious, but there were no signs or anything. And like the trails in the woods, and it's a state forest, you know? So like,
the whole reason there would have been a pond is because somebody would have dammed it up on purpose to create a pond.
Well, I mean, it was really tiny. Like a beaver could have done it. You know, it was like really small, but you could swim in it. But it was like probably 12 feet across. Not even, maybe 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was real small. So yeah, but yeah, so we got in trouble for that, and I'm still feeling anxious about it.
I was with a friend out in the woods, out at his land one time. There was probably 4 or 5 people, and we were just walking. We knew we were at somebody else's property, you know, just going through the woods. And all of a sudden we see this lady. That's, I think she's by a pond. And
it's always a pond.
So we're like, okay, we should go. And so we start like walking back, and one of the guys was in the middle of a clearing, and this other guy who's gotten me into trouble lots of times in my life yells, Hey, old lady!
No!
And of course she turns and looks up. She's all frightened. Yeah. And we take off running.
Yeah.
So like
shit.
30 minutes later, a truck comes pulling up in his driveway. And it's the guy who owned that property. And he knew exactly who it was.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Property. I would die.
Yeah, it was pretty anxiety feel. And he got out. He had a gun.
Oh, my God.
And he was yelling and screaming.
Oh, my God.
Coming on my brother, scaring my mama.
Oh, no. Well, you messed with
Where's your
mom.
daddy? Where's your daddy? And neither of his parents were home. Unsupervised.
How old were you?
We were probably in the 6th or 7th grade.
Okay.
At that point, yeah.
Yeah. So basically old enough to be unsupervised, but too young to be threatened with a gun.
And really too young to be unsupervised with like 5 of us out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
What would you consider worse? One kid out there in the woods by themselves, or 5 boys like
knowing
that?
Teenage boys, I would have to say the more teenage boys, the worse off you are, because somebody's going to get something started and the others are going to join in for peer pressure.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, back to the swampy bit with Michael and Molly. They're talking about, all the things. And Michael says, Dave's right about your being scared of dying. And she's all, but aren't you scared? Isn't everybody? And he goes, well, it's like nuclear war, Molly. If I think about it, I get really scared. So I don't let myself. There's no sense in worrying about things you can't change. And that made me wonder, do kids today feel that way about school shootings? How they did drills for...
Probably a mix.
Nuclear war. Like, that's not a thing we really, or kids at least, think about like they used to when there were like drills and stuff. But there's school shooting drills. So, like, I wonder if they think about it that way. It's
it was a big deal when they were doing the nuclear, fallout and that stuff. So, and that caused a lot of anxiety for everybody.
Right.
So I would assume that it's a mixture of kids, with some that it just filled them with anxiety every day that they have to go to school, thinking, will today be the day when somebody comes in and shoots? Oh. And then others that are like, well, there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm just going to think about these other things.
Yeah. Although, I mean, there's nothing for you to do in like a nuclear fallout, but you have, you can't fight against it.
Right.
But they do tell kids in these drills, like they have a certain order of operations, like hide if you can, or, last resort, fight back if you can. They have them tell them like throw books. Some school districts tell them that sort of stuff. And, so, I mean, that's a more actionable thing. And you have to think, they're making them think about that, like what they can do to fight. And I mean, that would probably stir up extra anxiety to me, because like nuclear bomb falls, it's gonna fall.
Yeah,
there's nothing you can do about it, but they kind of put some of the onus on the kids. Anyway, so the kids return back to the house and they hear all this crashing and stuff inside, and they're like, oh shit, there's like a robber or something in there. So they run out into the street to wait for Jean and Dave and Heather to get back, and so they go into the house. Once they do, and it turns out all of Jean and Molly and Michael's personal possessions are destroyed. Nothing belonging to Heather and Dave. And I mean, everything is fucked up. Like, that's the saddest bit. Like, Michael's like collects all these insects and stuff, and he's got all these specimens. All of them are thrown down on the ground and broken, and like things he's been collecting for years. And I'm like, oh, it's so sad for him. And then Molly's like diaries and journals and all the stuff she's been writing and stuff. Totally ripped apart. It's real sad. Okay, so Michael and Molly are discussing this, and Molly sees, I didn't write it down, a message from Helen saying, what does she say? I'll come back, I'll be back, or something creepy.
I remember the part where she wrote something, and then there was something later on that has the same handwriting.
And it says H-E-H, but I
don't remember what.
Whatever it is, it was written on the wall. And Molly sees it and tries to point it out to her mom, and it disappears before she sees it. Anyway, it's real weird. So Michael and Molly are discussing this. They're like, Molly's like, it's a ghost. And he's like, no, that's ridiculous. And she goes, what about poltergeists? I've even read stuff in the newspaper about them. They throw furniture and destroy stuff, and scientists don't have any explanation for them. And then Michael, clear-headed Michael, I found it. Oh, okay, this is before they went in. Anyways, clear-headed Michael goes, yes, but you never see them. They cause a lot of destruction, but they don't manifest themselves the way you claim Helen does. Is that different?
No.
From a ghost?
No.
I mean, he's saying that like that's a real thing.
That's the author not being a human and knowing how humans would think.
Okay. So, what do you think Mary Downing Hahn is? If she is not human.
She's a chimpanzee who evolved in the woods. A very hyperactive, like a... she had, so what do the X-Men have? They have mutations. Mm-hmm. She has a mutation that allows her to...
Are you saying Mary Downing Hahn is an X-Men?
To think and look like a human. But then she still has the same traits as a chimpanzee. Like in the book that I'm reading now, it talks about things that chimpanzees can't do that humans and dogs can't. So she just doesn't think exactly alike.
Because she's an X-Men.
Because she's a chimpanzee X-Men.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, she wrote I Have Come, H-E-H, which I know. Dirty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, but Wait Till Helen Comes.
Wait Till Helen Comes.
My God.
And she's like, bitch, I came. Oh, and then, but Heather did see it, and she goes, what did I tell you? Heather whispered. Without my noticing, she crept to my side. One cold hand touched my arm as she smiled up at me, her back to Dave. But she's like such a little fucking creeper child.
So before they got back, they heard something at the door, and...
You mean Michael and Molly?
Michael and Molly. Yeah. And Michael's like, let's get out of here. And he turns and starts going the opposite direction. I think they jumped out of a window or something. And Molly turns around and sees Helen. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, yeah. She sees her leave. That's right.
And so all Michael sees, Michael doesn't see that at all. He thinks that there was an intruder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's an important point for me for here in a couple of minutes.
Okay. So, I'm honestly surprised by this point Molly hasn't had a full-on breakdown. I mean, because she is literally being terrorized by Heather and Helen, I guess. Right. But mainly by, Heather. I mean, she is torturing mainly Molly, but both of them. But they share a room and all that stuff, so... I mean, poor Molly's like fucking breaking down and crying all the time. The fact that her brain hasn't completely snapped is remarkable. So Heather tells Molly that Helen destroyed their belongings and that Helen will do anything Heather asks. So Mr. Simmons is this guy who like takes care of the grass, the graves and stuff in the graveyard.
Before that,
they
actually called the police. And the police came out and made a report.
Right, because they thought it was a robbery or
because
intruder.
They think there's an intruder, and obviously something happened to the house. And Michael ratted Molly out and said that Molly thinks she saw a ghost.
Yeah, it was a dick move.
and then, of course, like the mom says, "Oh, Molly." And then the police officer's like, well, man, that would be the first person who's said they seen a ghost, but
here, yeah,
I haven't seen one personally. But then they say only certain people can,
right?
Yeah,
and
and then he's like, nobody in this city would have done this,
right? Okay,
yeah, okay.
So how much did that frustrate you? You think he's saying like, oh, it could have been?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, he does qualify. I've never personally.
Right.
That's something for other people to think. Yeah.
He hasn't personally seen anything, but he could think.
But saying that no person in the city would have, it makes you think, well, maybe there's a transient living out in the woods or something, and they came in and destroyed their house or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy.
Anyway, so this guy, Mr. Simmons, so, they've talked to him a few times. And so they're talking to him about this break-in or whatever. Molly tells him, everything she's heard up about and seen about Helen and everything. And he's all, if I hadn't heard something like it before, I'd think you made it all up. But my own sister was convinced that our cousin Rose was led to her death in Harper Pond by the very spirit you've described to me. I didn't believe it at the time, but my sister went to her grave convinced that Rose was possessed by Helen Harper. I stared at him, my heart thumping. Do you think Heather's in danger? I asked. He fidgeted with his pipe. Oh, it all sounds so crazy, he said, especially standing here in the sunlight. But I've seen her, I said. I've seen Helen. He picked up the handles of his wheelbarrow and began pushing it toward the compost heap. All I can say is keep Heather away from this graveyard. Don't let her near Harper House or the pond. Like, she could have asked him to tell Dave that.
Yeah.
I mean, so,
right.
And explain how, she's not listening to me, but here's an adult.
Yeah, but as an adult, I would have been, well, he'll just think I'm crazy. I'm not going to go tell him that.
I guess so. But still, it's a falling down stone house.
Right, that's
true.
The
fact that nobody's concerned about this except saying, have this 12-year-old babysitting her, and she's saying, hey, she's not listening to me.
Yeah.
She's going to this physically dangerous place. Nonetheless, anyways.
That's another thing is they expect her to be in charge of Heather, but actually give her no authority to do anything about it. They never believe anything she says about Heather, and just tell her that she's the older kid and the other kid's sensitive, but doesn't actually give her any power to keep the other kid out of trouble.
Yeah, I don't. They're shitty.
Yeah,
so shitty that one day, does Molly wake up? I think. Anyway, she finds a note saying, "Hey, we're gone to town. You're in charge of Heather. She's sitting watching TV."
Not like how it read to me was like this was literally right after.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if was there some other clue that said it wasn't right after.
I forget. I read it yesterday.
So these parents are so flaky about leaving Heather alone with them that they literally say we're taking her and not you guys. You guys are old enough, and then they turn around right away and leave her there again with them and go off on their own.
But they don't even talk to Molly about it. They don't even say, hey, we're going.
Right.
And they just leave, because I know she was asleep or something, because,
we don't trust you guys to be alone with Heather.
Yeah.
But be alone and in charge of Heather.
Yeah. So Molly goes to find her, and guess what? Of course, Heather has snuck out. So she's like, well, she's probably gone to the pond or the house. So Molly searches the woods and finally finds the house and finds Helen there, persuading Heather to join her in the pond. And Molly leaps in to rescue Heather. But Helen's vows to drown them both for Molly's interference, and Molly's trying to pull Heather out, and Helen's following them, still all in the water, and Molly tears the locket from Heather's neck and hurls it into the water. And so Helen lets go of them and turns to go after the locket so Molly can drag Heather out to shore. And the girls take refuge in the house, but the floor collapses beneath them, plunging them into the cellar. And Heather's really upset, but she finally admits that she accidentally started the fire that killed her mother, and now fears her father will stop loving her if he learns the truth. And turns out, Helen started the fire that killed her parents. making her the only person who understood Heather. And Molly's like, oh, I'm sure your father always loved you, and we'll all love you, blah, blah, blah. And then, they discover the skeletal remains of Helen's mother and stepfather there in the cellar with them. You know, the ones that were never found before. So they're talking, and Helen appears in the cellar and begs her parents Bones to forgive her. And another ghost manifests and embraces Helen before the two spirits disappear. And seeing that Helen's mother forgave her, Heather feels that she, too, may be forgiven. Hours later, Dave and Jean and Michael rescue them from the cellar. After this trying experience, Heather has changed, I guess. She lets Jean hug her, and the next day she confesses to her father about the fire, and he forgives her, of course.
And everybody lives happily ever after, just that easily.
Well, the family begins to bond. And also by the end of the summer, Helen's parents' remains are buried with Helen under a stone angel. But while visiting their grave, Heather discovers the locket hanging from the stone angel's hand, along with a note from Helen asking that Heather not forget her. And so now Molly believes it's safe for Heather to keep the locket, now that Helen is finally at peace. You hated it. You don't think it's an exciting story for kids?
I'm sure for kids, it's probably creepy and great.
Yeah.
Because they don't have to have things like logic or human motivation.
Mm-hmm.
They just have to be told, this is the way it was. And, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
You put a lot of logic behind Harry Potter, though.
Yes, yeah? Absolutely.
Yeah.
She thought out that stuff a lot.
Oh, no, she did. But you still have to believe in magic.
Well, I mean, it's a premise.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you build that framework,
mm-hmm.
She still made them human. She still made them have...
She made giants.
Actual emotions, real emotions and reactions to things that happen.
She had a soul split into 7 or 8 pieces.
Right. Yes. And then afterwards, he acted like a dick because he had no soul left.
But you don't believe in soul.
No, I believe in a story premise, though.
Oh my God. This is the premise.
And human motivation and how people would react.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is how Heather reacted after being traumatized by killing her mother.
And how the parents would react to each... Yeah, anyway.
Motherfuckers. Anyway.
Aye.
So you know what I do love?
What do you love?
In books. When books mention other books in media and stuff. Like this book, she was reading Watership Down and Edgar Allan Poe and listening to a West Side Story tape on her Walkman and reading The Borrowers to Heather.
Borrowers, that was...
And my favorite bit, I think the first night she was sharing a room with Heather. She turned her back and grabbed her cassette player and put the earphones on. Soon, all I heard was the voice of Julie Harris reading one of Emily Dickinson's poems. A good inspiration for the poetry I plan to write this summer. I just think that's hella lovely. So what are you reading now?
It's called Sleights of Mind by Sandra Blakesley. Mm-hmm. Sleights of Mind. But anyway, it's basically... It's kind of, it deals with magic mm-hmm. and how magicians are able to fool people. And it has a lot of explanations about how the mind works because it's done from a neuroscientist's mm-hmm. perspective of what people can do to actually trick the brain. Not only the brain, but the visual senses. And there's also I'm learning all kinds of good stuff in here. I'll mm-hmm. probably end up listening to this multiple times because mm-hmm. I'm going to end up missing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there are concepts that, like, there are 6 types of it. There are at least, I don't know the exact amount. There are multiple types of attention. There's at least 6 different types of attention. And each one of these types of attention makes people's brain act a certain way. Mm-hmm. And you can, what's the word?
Direct?
I don't kinda, know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's kind of manipulate. You can literally manipulate somebody just by how you make their attention go to something or do one of these specific types of attention, and then that takes up brain power that allows you to do something else. And then it also talks about like how when you're looking at things with your vision, like we only have 1 million pixels in our eye. So, but we see things in high def, which, even our TVs right now are way over that. I mean, basically that's the pixels of a cheap digital camera. We've got 30 megapixel cameras now, and yet we see a 30 megapixel image different than we see a 5 megapixel image. And why is that when we only have 1 million megapixels in our own eyes? And it's because our brain has tricks of filling in the gaps of different things and shading techniques and how it focuses on one specific area, and then your attention outside of your periphery acts in a different way, and your brain will fill in what's going on. But it literally teaches you that you can trick people with visual stimulus, and you can make people see things like ghosts because of the way the eye works. It'll see and then it'll turn off, and then you'll have an after image in the brain. And there are things that you can do to trick people and manipulate that after image and how people remember that after image or see that after image. And there's something in here that they're talking about where you can make something that you're looking at not appear in your brain. Like and their example was that you can have a black bar going across a white background, and if you flash a light on it where they literally see it with their eyes, and then immediately turn it off and then project an image of that same black bar back in the same place, because of how your mind works, you won't see the bar at all. It'll completely wash out what you're seeing. And the people who were writing the book were talking about they're going to try to develop that into a magic trick that they can. Yeah. There's like an annual competition to for the best illusion, and they're going to work on trying to develop that, what they know about that, into an illusion. But I'll just read the blurb here, and then I'll be done. Have you ever wondered how a magician saws a woman in half, or makes coins materialize out of thin air, or reads your mind? Magic tricks work because humans have a hardwired process of attention and awareness that is hackable. A good magician uses your mind's intrinsic properties against you in a form of mental jujitsu to fool you every time, even when you know full well that you're being tricked. The founders of the exciting new discipline of neuromagic have convinced some of the world's greatest magicians to reveal their techniques for tricking the brain. This fascinating book is the result of the author's worldwide exploration of magic and how its ancient principles can now be explained using the latest discoveries of cognitive neuroscience. The secrets behind magic tricks reveal how your brain works, not just when watching a magic show, but in everyday situations. For instance, if you've ever found yourself paying for an expensive item you'd sworn you'd never buy, the salesperson was probably a master at creating the illusion of choice, a core technique of magic. By popping the hood on your brain as you are suckered in by sleights of hand, Macnick and Martinez Conde unveiled the key connections between magic and the mind, and along the way make neuroscience more exciting and accessible than ever before.
So my thought is, from what I've heard in the car when you're listening to it, and what you've told me about it, it makes me want to read it if I ever get to do any more theater lighting. Because, yeah, a lot of it reminds me of that. And I think that's why I use the word direct, too, because I understand a little bit about, the psychological use of lighting and manipulating, and where your attention goes in color theory and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it'd be interesting if I ever get to do lighting again. So I'm reading The Lost Girls by Lori Fox. And I put it on hold because they're making a movie out of it, and it's got Emma Thompson in it, and it sounded really interesting. It's about 4 generations of Darling women as they struggle in the aftermath of their adventures with Peter Pan in Neverland. Yeah. And so it sounded really cool. And so, this Wendy must, escape Pan's hold on her, and, how that, all that sort of stuff fucked with her head when she was 13, and now she's an adult, and
nobody's gonna believe you about this huge.
No, that part's interesting, yeah. But I'm about halfway through, and I haven't completely bought into it, so it's kind of disappointing. I'm still reading it
because it's such a good premise.
It's a very good premise, but I don't think I like. I'm wondering if I'm seeing it. It was written in 2004. Published December 30th, 2003. So basically 2004. And I'm wondering if my views and stuff on feminism and things have changed, and the whole social side of feminism has changed since the early 2000s.
Yeah, quite a bit.
I wonder if it were written now by somebody, if it would be totally different. So I wonder if the film adaptation will take that sort of stuff into consideration.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So anyways, I guess I'm going to finish it. I don't know, see how much attention I give it tonight, but yeah. So our next book, we're going to be reading, who the hell wrote it? I didn't write that down. We're going to be reading the short classic. There are 97 pages with illustrations. Bunnicula by Deborah and James Howe. Yeah, super short, which is great because we're actually recording 2 podcasts this week. Because next week Steven's going to be out of town. He gets to go up to Massachusetts and see all the pretty stuff, and I'm so jealous. I know.
I mean, they're only
you will see trees in Andover, Massachusetts. I promise you.
So they're only going to let us have 1 rental car, and it's not going to be in my name. So I can't go out and take pictures or anything like that.
So we'll see you back next week, or for us in 2 days. Thank you so much for listening. We're rereading the books of your childhood,
so you don't have to.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.